Hello friends, for this lecture we have Professor Payal Nagpal, who teaches English in Janaki Devi Memorial College, Delhi University. I would request Professor Payal Nagpal to tell us a little about the 19th century in his context, and that he is basically a short story writer, not anything else. Maybe I'm doing injustice to his writerly abilities, but then please tell us about this particular aspect. He is basically, fundamentally, a writer of short stories.
Thank you, Professor Prakash. Yes, it is true that he's basically a writer of short stories. He had written novels also, but he's considered to be the master of the short story, so to say. So, and it's interesting, you also asked about the 19th century. So yes, he belongs to what is called the naturalist school of the 19th century. He was greatly influenced by the writings of Balzac, of Flaubert, and in fact he had a very close connection with Flaubert. And in fact it is said that at one point Flaubert said that he's my disciple and I love him like a son. So that is the kind of connect that Maupassant had with Flaubert, and it is in Flaubert's house that he would often meet writers like Zola and Turgenev. Turgenev was a Russian writer and Zola is a French writer. So all these influences can actually be seen in his writing, but one has to say that where Maupassant partakes of the 19th century writers, but he has a very distinct style of his own, and immense clarity, and there is a certain kind of both expanse of thought, and yet at the level of language there is brevity, and there's a very distinct style that he has, and that I think certainly makes him the master of the short story.
There is one more query about the French short story. We don't say the same about the English short story. In fact, if somebody asks me, tell something about an English short story writer, I fumble for words, because basically no writer in English would be the kind of short story writer that Maupassant is in French.
Yes.
And there is an American short story, but there's no English short story.
Yes.
So we learn that way, the students and the teachers and scholars of English, what short story is as an art. This is precisely done by this person to elaborate, to explain, and to tell us about the nature and character of the short story. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would agree with that, and there is certainly a lot to learn. I mean, even a writer like Balzac, he begins by writing the short stories, and then of course he writes a series of novels, and we've already discussed that. But it's true, I mean, Balzac, Flaubert, all these writers, they do write short stories. And now that you ask this, I'm also wondering if the short story in its beginnings also kind of ties up very well with what we call the realist style. So I think there is some kind of connection with the form and the ideological aspect, if one may say, of writing of the short story. So I think the two kind of gel well here, and distinctly so in Maupassant's writing.
That's good to know, and please begin your points now.
Yes, thank you. So Guy de Maupassant, he was born in 1856 and lived up to 1893, and it is in this period that he has written so many short stories that they have been put together in different volumes. An important aspect of Maupassant's life is that his initial education was actually in the church, and then he was sent to a small seminary, and later of course he receives higher education. His parents they separate at a certain point, and I think he's about 11 years old when that happens, and both children, he and his brother, brought up by the mother. So the influence of his mother was very distinct on his life, and she had approached Flaubert to kind of look out, in a sense, for Maupassant, and there is in that sense a very deep connection between Maupassant and Flaubert. A distinct impact that one can see on Flaubert's on Maupassant's writing is that of the Franco-Prussian War of 1870. So I think these factors, the influence of Flaubert, his interaction with writers like the Russian realist Turgenev, the naturalist Zola, all these can be seen in his writing, as can we see the impact of the Franco-Prussian War. The short story that we will be discussing today is going to be The Necklace, and when we talk about Maupassant, this is the story that comes to mind. Also because I think right from the school level onwards, the introduction to students, both in terms of the genre of the short story and in terms of certain ideas, is Maupassant's writing, and The Necklace features as an important story there. So what is it about this particular story that kind of has so much of appeal that we look at it in different ways at different levels? So if we just look at the way in which this story opens, we can immediately establish the kind of connections that we've discussed vis-a-vis Flaubert, the realist writers, the naturalists. I think it's all evident and it's all there. If we look at France of that particular period and Paris, it automatically filters into his writing. So the girl was one of those pretty and charming young creatures who sometimes are born, as if by a slip of fate, into a family of clerks. She had no dowry, no expectations, no way of being known, understood, loved, married by any rich and distinguished man. So she let herself be married to a little clerk of the Ministry of Public Instruction. We have some important aspects that we see here. The first being that Maupassant is discussing a very, very simple, ordinary family. It's a family of clerks. And in the 19th century, I mean, Gogol onwards, it is the ordinary man who is really speaking now become worthy of depiction in literature. So this aspect is important, and here the girl is born into this family, but she's extremely beautiful, and but she doesn't have any dowry, and she also does not understand, really speaking, the ways of the world. So the possibility of her being married by a rich and distinguished man is not there. So she marries an ordinary clerk, and there are many other stories by Maupassant where the clerk figures as an important character in the short stories. And as we look back towards the writing of Balzac, towards the writing of Flaubert, the ordinary people find a very important place in their writing. So she's also dressed very plainly, and she's unhappy because she feels that in this marriage she has, really speaking, fallen from a higher station. And in the story it is mentioned, and I quote, that since with women there is neither caste nor rank, for beauty, grace and charm take the place of family and birth. So here is this woman who knows that she is extremely beautiful. She has aspirations of either marrying into the upper class, or of being known in a sense in the upper crust, but there is no avenue as such. But that seems to be her aspiration, and immediately one is reminded of so many women protagonists from Balzac's novels, from Flaubert's novels, and within the span of a short story, Maupassant has captured this idea of the 19th century woman and her desire to be known in the more well-heeled aspects of society. So here I would request Professor Prakash to also share his views on this particular aspect of the 19th century writers.
No, no, what struck me, in your remark was the fact that she has aspirations to be known as a person from the upper classes, and she's born in a poor family, and she's married to a very ordinary person. So there should be some kind of a clash between what she is and what she wants to become. And that is something that is quite natural, quite common to the people of that particular section of society. But then because I also have read the story earlier, and all of us, all viewers, as Professor Payal Nagpal told us, that this story is very popular in the curricula of universities, of schools and colleges. So all of us know about the story. But then at this level, if you understand the story as Professor Payal Nagpal is presenting, then naturally there are lots of things that might have been missed by us, by me, for instance. So I would believe that there should be in a short story a kind of a villain. And if you would agree with me, I think the villain is this particular distance between her aspirations and her reality. So if that is, you agree there, then it's a short story in the, as you rightly say, in the social criticism or realism genre.
Absolutely, that is the real villain. It's not the woman herself per se, because she obviously does not realize this. The narrative tells us that she is extremely beautiful and would like to be, there is no possibility of her being known in a sense in the society of people who are rich. But she has.
So would you say that her beauty was her dowry?
Her beauty was her dowry, but at the same time, it's her realization of that and her expectation, in a sense, kind of also create a complexity in this particular situation. And I think the real villain is, it's not the individuals, but I think it's for instance what we see in a Balzacian novel, or we see in Madame Bovary, by Flaubert. It is the market itself that has also placed this pressure and has created these aspirations, has created in the 19th century a certain kind of demand, both on the upper crust and the way it filters into other sections of the society.
Even when the family is not a part of the market because they have very little income,
yes,
and they are only watching the market, and something is happening to them inside themselves, but then market is there. That's what you say.
Yes. I mean, one is immediately reminded, for instance, of Anastasie and Delphine in a novel by Balzac titled Old Goriot, where, it's more important, they're not bothered about the ailing health of the father, but it's more important to buy a gown for a particular ball. And now here, it's not about the individuals. Balzac is not being so critical of the women per se, but is drawing our attention towards the changing French society and the change in the times, where demand for a certain kind of consumerism is seeping in, which becomes almost vile in a novel like Madame Bovary, where we look at Emma and, for instance, the draper, Monsieur Leroux, who's constantly kind of drawing her into the market by kind of, inducing in her the desire to buy more and more. So it is that kind, one can immediately link that when we say that he's of the naturalist school, then these were the times. And there was this desire to be part of all these lovely parties and to be well dressed and to be there. And here, I think the villain of the piece is the changing Parisian society that has put this kind of market pressure and pressure of consumerism, I think, on the individual.
It's a very fine thread that you have already, pointed out. It's there, in the writing of the times, and it's there in Balzac, it's there in Flaubert, and the same thing is there affecting the consciousness of the mind of the protagonist, which is a woman here.
Yes, certainly. So she dressed plainly, and the narrative tells us that the narrative also, in a sense, of this short story preserves her innocence, because she is not so conscious of these desires as the narrative really explains to us. So she dressed plainly because she could not dress well, but she was unhappy, as if she had really fallen from a higher station. Since with women there is neither caste nor rank for beauty, grace and charm. So instinct for what is elegant, a supple mind are their sole hierarchy, and often make of women, of the people, the equals of the very greatest ladies. So the fact that she was extremely beautiful, she felt that she was equal to the greatest ladies, who might not have been as beautiful in fact, but had that kind of money. So it is in her marriage she feels that she has fallen from a specific station to really speaking, the ordinary class, so to say. So one needs to deliberate on why she feels like this. Why does Mathilde feel like this? And what is the kind of woman that Maupassant is presenting here? And why is he doing this? So the answer to this lies in a sense, in his response to the times. And this is where, as we've already discussed, that writers like Balzac and Flaubert and Zola, their response to the times, to capture how the society was bringing about this change in both men and women. I think in the society at large, this is what we really speaking see here. So it is this fine aspect that he really speaking captures within a short story. And it's interesting that in talking about this, we are comparing it with novels that are written by Balzac and Flaubert, but Maupassant has actually captured the same idea within the genre of the short story, which is why he's in that sense really speaking, he's mastered the craft of writing the short story. So he is expressed succinctly in a few lines, I think, what is elaborated in novels. And again, both these aspects, it's a simple family, the man is a clerk, and we have the woman who's she feels that she's suffering. Mathilde she feels that she's suffering ceaselessly, and she feels that she thinks that she was born to enjoy the luxuries, but she was distressed looking at the very, very humble surroundings in which she's placed. And at one point in the story, it's mentioned that she's very distressed looking at the bareness of the walls, at the shabby chairs, the ugliness of the curtains. So which she thinks that as a woman who's extremely beautiful, she's deserving of a much better rank. But
would you call her a romantic person, who doesn't like her surroundings and who wants to have her own ideal state to live and enjoy?
Here I think you've raised a very important point when it comes to a sense of romantic, and one might add to it by saying a kind of romantic melancholia that is there, especially in the women, in the writings of all these writers that we have discussed. It is there because their education, what they are reading, and where they are living through marriage, there's a complete disconnect between all this. And that gap generates this kind of distress that Mathilde is experiencing. And at the same time, I think the larger point that these writers, if we look at them in context, are raising about the kind of education that is imparted to women, and how they grow up believing that this is what they need to aspire for.
I think you have lent a very important dimension to this story by connecting it with the state of marriage in the 19th century France, where the marriages fall short of the expectations of any dreaming woman, of any romantic woman, and she feels that she has not found her place. So friends, already the net is spread quite clearly in front of us to discuss the story in its various aspects. And in the first part of the lecture, Professor Payal Nagpal has told us about the state of affairs that existed in France at that point of time, and it was cultural, it was ideological, and definitely it was social in nature. So in the second part of the lecture, or the second lecture itself, we will be discussing this story, in its aspects, that are generally hidden behind the curtain, because the writer is talking about the about certain things, and then he's pointing out things elsewhere.
Yes.
So I think Professor Payal Nagpal would be there to take up these questions in the second part, and till then, thank you.